What's up, you guys? Steven Vanderhook here, back with another video. Excited to jump into today's topic. We're doing the first episode of what's going to be a series down the line. We're going to do a few different of these of a book review. So I do read a lot. I read a lot of mostly nonfiction, a little bit of fiction. You can see pretty much the only thing I have displayed here happens to be fiction. That's just kind of a coincidence. But I probably read 90% nonfiction, and a good chunk of that are also financial books. So I do cover quite a bit of ground personally in reading financial books, so I thought I'd bring some of these in and start doing some reviews. If you're new to my channel, thanks for checking me out. Like and subscribe. We'll see you next time. Come back every week with new videos. Today we're going to cover The Millionaire Next Door. This is a really good book. I like it a lot. I actually came across it in college initially. One day I was just sitting there and it was my roommate's on my roommate's bookshelf. I'm not sure if he took a class because he was a Chem major, I don't know, but he had the book nonetheless. So I picked it up, started reading it one day, really liked it. It's been years since then, but I recently reread it for this review, and there were a lot of good points that I had kind of forgotten. I'm actually not sure I even finished the book, honestly, because the whole second half of the book sounded new to me. So anyway, really good book. Overall, I do recommend it. Let's dive into the specifics. The whole idea of the book is that we're going to cover the difference between what we think millionaires are and what they actually look like. Real day, everyday millionaires, the millionaire next door. They're not these huge rock stars, famous athletes. Yeah, those exist, but it's a very small percentage of actual millionaires. So the first thing we want to define is how he defines a millionaire, and it has nothing to do with how much money you actually make. The authors of this book really dive into the idea of that your wealth that you accumulate is really how we are going to measure your wealth. And so it's not about how much money you actually make, but more about how much money you save. So that's one of the big takeaways of the book is income versus wealth. Income is what you make, wealth is what you have, it's what you accumulate. So if you make $100,000 and spend $95,000, you're not wealthy. Who cares? Because you spent all the money that you made. Whereas if you make $50,000 and you save $15K a year, and over the course of 5 years, what is that? 15 times 75,000, right? Something like that. $75,000. So that's where they say, okay, this person actually is accumulating wealth. Even though they make less money than the person who makes 100K, it doesn't matter. We don't care how much they make. We care how much they actually save and accumulate. So that's one of the big takeaways that I really like. Wealth is way more than just how much money you make and how much money you spend. Remember, you make more money, you spend more money, it's just a bigger wheel. You're still in the rat race, you're still a rat just chasing the cheese, you haven't got out of it, you're just a bigger rat on a bigger wheel. So it's all about how much you can accumulate and save. Another way that they measure wealth that I really like to dive into specifically, the idea, how long could you live on your passive income alone? And that was an idea that struck me as really revolutionary. That's my main takeaway that I've remembered ever since the first time reading that years ago when I was like 22 years old or whatever. And I was like, oh, that's crazy. I've never thought about life like that. I've never thought about measuring your wealth by, if I lose my job today, how long could I live? How long could I keep up my lifestyle? So you can see there's two levers that we have there. One is how much money you have, and two is how fast you drain it, right? And so let's say that you have two identical situations as far as how much money they have. You have two dudes who both have saved $10,000. Well, if one person spends $4,000 a month, right? They got a sweet car, they got a big old penthouse that they rent in the city or whatever, but they spend $4,000 a month. Well, if they lose their job and they have $10,000 in cash, they don't have to change anything for 2.5 months. Whereas if you have someone who has $10,000 and they only spend $2K a month, right? They got roommates, they got a decent car, nothing special that they have paid off, so they only have maintenance costs, things like that, and they only spend $2,000 a month. Well, they can go 5 full months before they run out of money and before they actually have to cut their spending, right? So in that way, that person's twice as rich, even though they both have the same amount of cash saved up. So you got to remember the two different levers. It's not just how much money does someone have saved up, and if you have 100K saved up, that's awesome, right? But if you're spending 5, 10K a month, it's not going to last you nearly as long as if you're spending 3 to 4K a month. Keep in mind that their idea of wealth is more than just, not only is it not have to do with how much money you make, it's more about how much money you accumulate, and then after that, it's also how long could that money last you based on your current lifestyle. So I really like using that measurement of wealth, and it's a good way to keep yourself in check because, again, not only is it how much money have you saved, which is great first step, and a lot of people don't have a lot of money saved up, unfortunately, but when you're getting there, you're not like a lot of people, you're changing yourself, and you realize, I want to have a lot of money saved up. Well, also, if I don't spend as much money on a regular basis, this is going to last me a lot longer. That's awesome. That's the whole idea. That's the whole idea of like relaxing and be able to retire and chill, is that and not just chill and be lazy and don't do anything with your life, but start doing things other than your career and start doing other passions, pursuing other passions, you can do all that if you're not spending as much. So with that out of the way, we want to dive into what millionaires actually look like. Because a lot of people, when we think of millionaires, we do think of rock stars. We do think of Post Malone with his Bentleys and all of his sick cars and his big lavish lifestyle, and he's got a home in every state and whatever. But that's pretty rare. I mean, those people exist, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about millionaires. Really, most people who have have enough wealth to be considered a millionaire, their net value is worth $100 million or more. Those people actually usually live in middle class America. They don't even live in like upscale, everyone there is making $200K a year and everyone's a lawyer or a doctor and you got to have a full alphabet soup after your name with your degrees proving how much you've made. That's not even where millionaires live. A lot of millionaires actually just live in normal class, just, middle class, nothing fancy. Their house is $300K. They drive Camrys. They're really not all about buying things that look sweet on the outside. They're just about saving their money, spending conservatively, and accumulating a lot of wealth that can actually lead to real retirement, to real relaxation. Also, the idea that millionaires all inherit their wealth, that they're all these upper class Connecticut, Maine, their ancestors were on the Mayflower and their grandfather was Rockefeller and they made all this money back in the day. Also, not really true. 80% of millionaires, first generation millionaires. Thought that was pretty interesting, pretty surprising. Also, half of millionaires don't even inherit a penny. So this whole idea that you either have to be born into wealth or you have to have this crazy advanced degree and that's not really true. A lot of millionaires actually are entrepreneurs. They own like plumbing supply companies, things that aren't sexy, they're not exciting, but they make good money and they save that money that they make because they're not all about showing off how much money they make. And part of that is going to be the nature of being an entrepreneur and being in the plumbing industry or the janitorial supply industry. People don't expect someone like that to live in a nice house, to live in a nice car, whereas culturally we've kind of cursed doctors and cursed lawyers, and you could say people, we don't know the cause and effect because maybe it's the people who want that lifestyle that go into those professions, and it's a mix of motivations, but overall we do expect culturally that if you're a doctor, if you're a lawyer, you drive a Beamer, you drive a sick car, you have a sick house in a sick neighborhood, you live up on the hill, you live downtown in the penthouse, you're making it rain, and you got to spend that way to keep up the appearance. You got the nice suits, the nice watch, the nice shoes, everything you got to match. It's all got to be nice, it's all got to be luxury, and the reality is most people who look like that, well, they're spending everything they make in order to look like that. So they really haven't accumulated much wealth. Another interesting definition of the way that they actually calculate wealth is they have a calculation where they take how much money you make multiplied by your age, and then you divide it by 10, and that's how much your net income should be, or how much your net worth should be. So if you're 30 years old and you make $70,000, you multiply those together, and that's 2.1 million, divided by 10, that's 210K. So you're saying, ooh, I'm 30 years old, and if I make 70K, if I'm considered wealthy and on track, on pace to be a good accumulator of wealth, that I have to have 210K? That's a lot. Well, keep in mind, that formula does favor time. So it's a lot easier to be on par with that formula as you get older. So for example, if you're 50 years old and you make 90K a year, well, that's 4.5 million divided by 10. That's $450,000. As we all know, if you graduate at 22, 23, 24, whatever it is, you graduate college in your early to mid 20s, you've only worked for a few years, 5-7 years, to when you're 30. So having 200K is really difficult. Whereas by the time you're 50, all right, you've been out of college for, did I say 50 before? Did I say 40? I said 50. Yeah. So by the time you're 50, you've been out of college for 25 years. Yeah, okay, I could have 400K of net worth at that point. So you see the formula, and hopefully, you're making more money with that, but who knows? You can see the formula that does favor time, but this is their formula to say, are you on track for being able to retire as a millionaire? Going back to the whole, what does your life look like as a millionaire? Most millionaires don't drive the fancy cars. Now again, some do, right? And you're saying to yourself, how can that be? How can no one drive nice cars? Because I see nice cars all the time. Everywhere I drive, I see nice cars. I walk around a nice neighborhood, I see nice cars. No, those people make a lot of money, right? You got to make at least some money to buy a nice car, and especially if you're doing it, year after year after year, you continue to buy new nice cars. But those people don't accumulate anything. They don't have anything in retirement. All of their wealth is in their cars. It is in their stuff. So again, you got to get rid of that idea that your wealth is based off of what your life looks like. It's more about what your actual financial statements look like. What's cooler, a financial statement with an extra zero or a car? Obviously, a car is cooler, right? On the surface, it looks way better, but that's not what they're going for in this book. They're saying if you want to be a millionaire, unfortunately, it's as boring as your account statement, your balance statement having an extra zero at the end of it. But these people, millionaires only spend on average $25K on a car when they buy a car. Whereas in America, at least at the time of this publication, this book's a little bit older, so the numbers are a little outdated, but the percentages are all the same. America on average buys cars that are worth $21K. So that means that people are buying basically the same car even though they're a millionaire. It's only $4,000 more. So they're not out there all buying Bentleys and all buying Beamers and Sadies. They're buying boring cars that are American made. They get into some weird calculations about price per pound. That's kind of boring. But the concept is they're not buying nice car. They're not buying status. Millionaires don't actually care about status. People who make a lot of money and look like they make a lot of money, they care about status. That's why they spend all their money on these status producing items. One of the main takeaways from this book, if you don't get anything else, it's really, really good. I think the content of the book is really good. But one of their main formulas that I really like is their formula for what you should spend on your mortgage. There are a lot of different formulas out there for how much money you can spend on your mortgage, and some are obviously pretty conservative. Some are just way out there and spend. Yeah, if you can borrow 100K, if you can borrow 500K, buy a 500K house. Why not? Let's do it. Let's dive on in. Let's spend everything you can. Their formula I really like. The idea basically is really, really simple. They just say whatever mortgage you get, the principal balance should never be more than 2x what your annual income is, your annual household income. So that means if you make 75K, your mortgage can only be 140K. So if you want a $300,000 house, you got to be putting 50% down, right? So it is actually pretty conservative, but I like that it doesn't get into the numbers. It doesn't get into rates, year payments, or anything complex about 15-year, 30-year, fixed, variable. It doesn't deal with any of that. It's just really simple. It just says whatever your income is, multiply it by 2, make sure your mortgage isn't bigger than that. So if you want to buy a $200,000 house and again you make 70K a year, that means you got to put $60,000 down, right? So you got to put more than just the 20% down. You got to be putting, what is that, 30%? Yeah, 30% down. So nothing too crazy, but a $200,000 house, as you know, depending on where you live, that may not be that much. So they're really, really conservative about saying, hey, make sure that you have a lot saved. If you want a big house and you don't make a lot of money, you got to save up a lot of time ahead of time before you take out this huge mortgage. It's going to be this huge burden on your back all the time. So really good formula for mortgages. I really like it. One thing I really like from the book about these mortgages is saying, hey, yeah, we say only take out a small mortgage. You're going to hear a lot of other factors, but at the end of the day, if you don't go with our method, don't go with the bank. Because asking a bank how much mortgage you qualify for is like asking the fox how many hens are in the chicken coop. I love that analogy. It's so good. The bank's motivation is to make as much money off of you as they can. They're going to sell you as big of a mortgage as you can. They're going to stretch you as tight as you can. They don't care about your stress. They don't care about your accumulation of wealth. They just care about the fees they can generate and the interest they can generate as income. So don't go to a banker and ask them how much mortgage you qualify for, because it's going to be way, way bigger than anyone out there who knows anything about accumulating wealth, knows anything about budgeting. What they're going to advise you to do is a much smaller amount than what bankers will give you. Overall, my review for the book, the takeaways are the content of this book, really good, really interesting. It's a little dated. I think they have a more recent version that has some updated numbers and stuff, but it's all the same principles. So the content, really, really strong. I like it. Readability, it's a little bit repetitive, a little bit dull at times. Some of their stuff is really boring. Sometimes they get into analogies that are really interesting. Overall, I'd say the readability is probably a 3 out of 5, but the content's 5 out of 5. So at least read some summaries, dive into it. Maybe read the short version or feel free to skip liberally. Honestly, you're probably going to be fine doing that, and you'll still get a lot from this book because the content is just so dense and so rich, even if it is a little repetitive. Hope you enjoyed this first episode of Steven's Bookshelf. I think that's what I'm going to be calling the series. If you liked it, feel free to subscribe, share this with your friends. We'll see you next time.